Hey guys, welcome back to Chaos in the Paddock. I'm Isha Bajwa, and I'm back with fellow chaotic Anna Racing Rambles.
Hello, hello. We're
And
always here.
today we have someone that we talk about consistently on this podcast. I don't even know if he knows that. We have Delta Tom FP1.
Hello, hello, hello.
Oh my God, the Austin group is back together, and if you haven't listened to last year's Austin podcast, it's a fun listen. It's a fun listen. I think we were all a little delulu that day, but
More than a little.
more than a little. But we are here to talk about the Miami GP. And one of the conversations I want to bring back from the Austin episode is Burt Mylander. We saw Burt Mylander a lot, especially during the F1 Academy race 2 that didn't happen, and in the sprint race. And I want to bring him back up because we had a conversation before about if he were to listen to any music, his passenger princess, his co-driver, put on a certain song, what song would that be? And because we're in Miami, I feel like this is a perfect opportunity to ask, what song would Burt Mylander listen to as he's driving the safety car at the Miami Grand Prix?
I'll let Tom start with that one, given his recent social media activity.
Well, I love how we're getting right into this, and yeah, you know what? I know that you guys talk about me a lot, and it's definitely not healthy for my ego. Not that it needs any boosting, and like even the bad stuff or the stuff that can be perceived as the bad stuff, because any attention is good attention. But anyways, back to the topic. Yeah, it's definitely a conversation that is a fun one for sure, and with the fact that it's the Miami Grand Prix, like it's definitely you have the capacity to pick just like a plethora amount of songs, right? Like
Mm,
immediately, like if you're thinking about it, it's like, okay, well, you're in Miami, Pitbull's obviously got to be in the conversation,
yes.
right? So I mean, I recommended that we retire Miami by Will Smith. I think like it's had its time in the sun there. You know, it's been around for what now, 3 Grand Prix. So I feel like that's enough. It's like, okay, we can move on. I would I would initially just throw out there "Don't Stop the Party" by Pitbull. Like that's such a good one, and I think that should be the unofficial official theme song of the Miami Grand Prix. So that's the first one that I'm going to throw in there.
So, first one that comes to mind for me is probably not what most people would think, but given what the weather's been like, the vast majority of this past weekend, and kind of keeping in line with Pitbull, I'm throwing it very, very far back to Rain on Me, which is Pitbull and Mark Anthony, which is a really, really old song. But that's just the first one that came to mind.
Oh my
So
God.
keeping in trend with Pitbull and the rain.
If I want to continue on this Pitbull hype train, I was thinking I maybe hotel service.
All right, yeah,
That's a pretty fun song to listen to, especially and the fun vibes in Miami, and also the fact that many teams are sponsored by hotels and hospitality companies. But I'm like thinking of like a Spanish song. I'm thinking about Bad Bunny's new album. I know we're not in New York, but Nueva York by Bad Bunny. That's what I'm thinking. Like something fun um, a Latin Caribbean vibe and just a hit of the Spanish influence we always see in Miami.
So I think one team's social media that I like to interact with a lot, not that any of my songs get selected by the way, is Racing Bull. So Racing Bulls always does like the garage playlist, right? And so
yeah.
you can always go in there and recommend your songs, and then I don't know if they actually like pick songs from people that recommend it, or it's just like the drivers picking their songs and then the rest of the mechanics and the pit team.
Doesn't it
Um,
usually like have the social media handles of who picked it, or is that just like Yuki and Liam?
no, so it
Pretty cool.
does, but it
I
has so yeah, so it has like Isaac and Liam, and then it has the other handles. But I don't know if those are random people. I haven't like done any sort of investigative journalism skills to like see if they are. I feel like that'd be kind of weird if I just like started searching these random people.
Yeah, just like who's this?
Um, yeah, whether they're just people commenting in the comment section or if they're people in the garage. Either way, pretty weird. But anyways, I like that. And one of the songs that I saw for this weekend's garage playlist was "Temperature" by Sean Paul.
Oh
That
my
would be a good
god,
one.
I love that
Oh,
song. Every single
oh,
time I want to like get hype, I'll just be like, "Hey, Alexa,
yeah. Please
figure
don't
out
stop
what
me.
that means because I'm not activating mine. Play temperature." And I'm always like in a hyped mood.
On that same note, another very throwback song, but the same one. Fire Burnin', Sean Kingston. That'd be
Oh my
another good one.
god.
That
Let me
one that
look
one's
through
more
my
like
playlist.
energetic, I feel like.
Yeah,
Um,
if I were to recommend like a third song, and if I were to give, I guess, like my top three. So I got "Don't Stop the Party" by Pitbull. I got "Temperature" by Sean Paul. For me, the Jonas Brothers have to be in the conversation, and I would
Burning
put,
Up.
oh yeah, for sure,
Oh my god. Oh,
"Burning Up" by the Jonas
what
Hello.
year
Brothers.
are we in? 2008?
Well,
Apparently.
you could argue that that was such a fantastic like era of music,
You're
and
not wrong.
as the honorary fifth Jonas brother, I feel like I gotta support family. So,
What?
Whatever floats your boat, Tom.
well, I mean, I gotta shout out the Jonas brothers, right? Like, I mean, I gotta support family. So, "Burning Up" by the Jonas brothers would be like my third pick.
That's about as real as the marina on the circuit.
Mm.
No, I'm Tom Jonas. It has a good ring to it.
My third pick has to be "Livin' La Vida Loca" by Ricky Martin.
Ooh. What would my third pick be? Geez, I don't know. I
I
have no
feel like
idea.
"Sports Car" by Tate
Ooh, that'd be a good
McRae
one.
because they are driving a sports car.
Or I could
I,
say, oh, I don't remember the artist, but it's EDM, and it's it's literally just called Ferrari.
oh,
It's really
yeah,
good.
yeah, that song
No,
that's been all over my For You page in
probably.
2023. Yeah,
Yeah,
I
yeah,
know
yeah.
what you mean. I
That
know
one's
which one
just
you're talking
got
about.
a good beat, so I feel like it fits like the aesthetic, but obviously it's not very good luck for the team.
No, all right, moving on from this very fun conversation we're having about songs that we loved and recession pop
Hey,
especially.
we got to start the podcast off happy before we get into the not so happy stuff.
Yes, I first want to talk about the sprint race. Yes, Miami is a sprint weekend, and we had a very, very chaotic sprint race. One thing I want to say is I think we all collectively forgot that we are in Florida and rain can happen at any moment of the day. You just have to always be prepared for it, and it's going to come really hard, and then 15 minutes later, it's gone.
Yeah, and we were talking about it as Isha and I were on FaceTime watching the race today. That because there isn't a certain Floridian on the grid anymore, I think A, they all forgot about that, and B, it was his version of like a death curse. It's like, I'm not on the grid anymore, fine, you get rain the whole weekend.
And I'm so surprised. It's the fourth running of the Miami Grand Prix, and I think this is the first time we are seeing rain in
Yeah.
Florida, one of the most
Weird.
humid and hottest places in the continental United States.
And I mean, it's a peninsula. Like, they
Yeah.
get battered from both sides by what I guess what would be the ocean version of lake effect weather, ocean effect weather, whatever. Yeah. It's like, I think the entire paddock collectively forgot that existed. And they paid the price.
Yeah.
But I guess the question that I have is, would you deem then the sprint race was more, I'll use the word entertaining very selectively here. Would you deem that the sprint race was more entertaining than the actual race itself? Because I feel like, without even going on social media, I feel like that would be the majority of the opinion.
Yeah.
um
Mhm.
and then I guess a follow-up question to that is, fundamentally, is there something just wrong with the Miami circuit? Because that's also something that has been a conversation since F1 started racing in Miami,
Yeah,
quite
day one.
frankly.
Yeah. I mean, I'm gonna answer your first part. I don't think there's anything wrong with Miami circuit. Especially we saw some great racing, especially around turn 11 where I sat last year. But I will get into that later. I feel like for racing in the dry, yes, it's good. But when we saw F1 Academy try to get out there for their second race, it was a complete downpour. No one was able to see. They ended up postponing that race, and I I think where they timed it in the calendar, it's not in football season, but we're also not in hurricane season in Florida. So, I mean, yes, you're still going to deal with rain in Florida, but not as much with the timing of it happening like the first week of May. I feel like they need to have a better system to deal with the rain if it's going to be a consistent issue now. But like I said before, this is only the fourth running of the Miami Grand Prix, and the first one with rain like this. So I feel like yes, we do need to prepare for rain, but I don't see it as a consistent thing at Miami for years to come until 2041.
16 more years. That doesn't seem like a real year,
It
by the way.
doesn't.
2041.
It's like when you're in elementary school and you see your high school graduation year, it's like that's so far away.
Yeah. It's like
And
that
then
doesn't
once you
exist
get
yet.
to college and you see, oh, your graduation year, it's so far away.
It's not.
I, I never thought 2025 would come because that's when I graduate college. And seeing that specific number is crazy. But going to 2041, I can't imagine.
Yeah. I'd probably agree saying that there isn't necessarily anything wrong with Miami itself. I'll say that it's probably the same thing that's wrong with a lot of street circuits, barring maybe Vegas, because Vegas doesn't have as many twists, turns, chicanes, hairpins as a lot of street circuits just across the calendar does. I think it's mostly the issues with the cars.
Hmm.
Because they had round 7, so the second Monaco E pre race this morning, and there was overtakes left, right, and center everywhere. There's probably 80 or 90 overtakes total
Hmm.
across the entirety of that race, and that's 29 laps.
Yeah.
So that's not even as near as long as the F1 races. So I just think that modern Formula One cars, and maybe with the reg changes next year, I know it's not like a massive change, but maybe it will have more of an effect than we think. That's primarily the issue with Miami, is just the size. Because like
Yeah.
coming around some of those tight corners and going through like the chicanes, you can't, you go side by side and you're an nth of a centimeter off, someone's going into the wall or someone's
Yeah.
getting pushed off track. So I'd say honestly, it's more the car's issue than the track itself.
And even in the same race weekend, even though we didn't see a race two for F1 Academy, those cars are so much fun to watch, especially when we saw them in Jeddah last time. And they were completing many overtakes, even though they don't have DRS to push to pass. Because they're smaller F4 cars, we were able to see them able to complete overtakes where F1 cars couldn't.
Yeah, I think it almost can be perceived as like a trick question, right? Because ultimately, at the end of the day, it's all based on your personal preference. Um, I would probably understand if people called me like a Miami Grand Prix hater, um, because
If you're a
like
hater, I'm a lover. I love the Miami Grand Prix.
but I wouldn't say I'm a hater. I just like my argument has really been like from a track perspective, and yeah, I think what Anna's saying is very valid. Because I mean there are lots of circuits that can be a lot better if the cars were a lot smaller.
Mhm.
Um, and from the standpoint of like just the circuit and the track itself, I just don't think Miami is anything more than like a mid-level circuit, quite
Yeah.
frankly.
I'd agree.
I wouldn't say like I wouldn't say it's inherently, I guess, like the worst track ever. I think my argument is more along the lines of with having 3 races in the United States, and for the fact that like Coda always gives us fantastic racing.
Mhm.
2 years in a row, Las Vegas has given us fantastic racing. Miami sort of just becomes like the outlier, right?
Yeah.
And
Mm.
that is really where I suppose like my my issue with it is
Mm,
the fact that like it's on the calendar now for 16 more years, where we do have the likes of Spa rotational, right?
yeah,
And I get it. This is very sort of surface level arguing. I know the business aspect. I
yeah,
understand the sorts of revenue it brings in, but also at the same time too, like, is there legitimacy in the argument of like, well, the Miami Grand Prix feels more like a spectacle than it actually does feel like a race, and
yeah,
I think that has to be I guess looked at fairly rather than just like, oh, like you're a hater for it. It's just like, no, I like the vibe of Miami more than I like the vibe of Vegas.
yeah,
Vegas is very much a city like you either love it or you hate it. I would prefer to go to Miami, and I would go to the Miami Grand Prix, but again, it feels more like a spectacle than it does you're
yeah.
there for, or Formula One is there more for racing. That's just my perception.
Yeah, I was like I am gonna say again, I was there at Miami last year as a fan, and I had so much fun. I brought my sister with me, who's not a big Formula One fan. Now is a big Formula One drama fan. She won't watch the racing, but she will text me, "Hey, what's going on with the Ferraris right now? Why do they hate each other all of a sudden?" I'm expecting that text from her soon. But as a fan and as someone being introduced to the Miami Grand Prix, it was so much fun just being there and having so many opportunities and so many companies giving out free stuff or having their own activations for the public and also for content creators. We are Formula One content creators, and now we are seeing more Formula One content creators in Miami. I honestly think the Miami Grand Prix is, I don't want to say turn into the F1 content creator Grand Prix, but seeing multiple content creators there making their content and showing that Formula One is great, especially to American audiences. Yes, it's great, but again, it's the business side. If we're looking at the pure racing perspective, honestly, if I were to decide, I would have Vegas and Miami on a rotating basis between each other.
Yeah, I'd agree. I'd agree with that. And to bring up I think it was Tom said that like Miami's a lot of a show. I cannot remember the creator's name, but I was scrolling on TikTok. I think it was yesterday, and said that because F1 has been in Europe for so long, and F1 has only been in the United States since 2018, and has really only had like major media coverage since 2022, that's the reason Miami and Vegas specifically are treated as this big show, because that's what a lot of sports in the United States is. I mean, you
Yeah,
take a look at the Super Bowl, the World Series, even to a point for me and Tom, the Stanley Cup. It's a huge show. There's a lot of showmanship. There's the pre-game shows with all the projections in the NHL and like all the halftime shows and musical artists. And yes, F1 races, like pretty much everywhere else in the world, have huge concerts, usually Saturday or Sunday nights. But I think it's because it's still so new and novel in a way in the United States. It's not NASCAR, it's not IndyCar, it's something
hmm,
different. That's why it's such a big show, and that's why all the smaller creators get the opportunities they do in Vegas or in Miami specifically, whereas just big influencers get the opportunities in Vegas because that's glitz and glam and money, whereas Miami seems more like specifically focused towards content creators. But
it's
that creator
specifically
made a
towards
great,
content creators and fun
yeah.
with like just the vibes of Miami. I don't know how to quantify it into a word, but with F1 content creators and just regular creators there, I feel like it's a great opportunity because yes, the glitz and glamour with all like prominent celebrities at Vegas, but now like we are actively making space in Formula One content and marketing where we are actually valued for our work. It's great to see so many teams, sponsors, and just also content creators going on their own accord making content. It's a great time, and I am definitely going to be saving up my money to go in 2026.
Yeah, there's a lot to unpack there. I do want to talk about the content creator, um, maybe like overhaul is the word I would use. I want to talk about that afterwards. I think just sticking on to the conversation about, what's kind of separates Miami and Las Vegas.
Hmm.
Because I mean that's a fair point that you should brought up about like being there, because like I went to Japan this year, and the perception being there versus watching the race on TV is night and day. Like
Yeah.
being there, I had such an amazing experience. The like watching it in person versus watching it on TV, I think regardless of if there's a lot of on track action or not, you're always going to be able to have an amazing time physically being there. I can assure you that like everyone that I was surrounded by, including like my dad and our friend in Japan, and that was their first time at an F1 race, and they don't even watch F1 regularly. They had a blast, right? So,
Mhm.
um, and just being able to interact with like other fans and a whole bunch of stuff. So, yeah, it is two different worlds for sure. I think, and going back to Anna's point here about like how sports are treated in North America versus how they're how Formula One has usually been because they've been in Europe. Um, I do understand the business aspect. I think what just worries me and what I have sort of a cautionary eye on is the fact that yes, I understand that for Formula One, you obviously want to make a spectacle out of it. Part of it is because it is a city like Miami, and then also with Vegas, and you are closer to the downtown hub. Versus if you go to Japan, you're commuting like an hour and a half just to get to the track, and then you're there the whole day, right?
Yeah.
So
The same thing with
uh,
Coda. It's like half an hour from downtown Austin to the track.
yeah, it's just because like it's in the middle of nowhere
Yeah.
basically. So but at the same time too, I think what Formula One still sort of struggles with, and maybe they'll get it down, is the fact that like there tends to be this issue about like having a consistent product.
Yeah.
Because if you take a look at something like the NHL, and I guess an argument can be made like, well, F1 has to change when it comes to North America because it's a global sport, which is whereas you take a look at like the NFL and the NBA and the MLB, they're not as global. Although the NBA, you probably make an argument to suggest that it is. But for the NHL, they always go at the beginning of the season over to Scandinavia, and they do the I can't remember what the series is called, but they'll always do games in like
Yeah.
Finland and in Sweden,
Same
and
with
it
the
does.
NFL. Like they'll have exhibition games all over the world. Usually, I think the past couple years they've been in the UK, but now we're seeing them in Sao Paulo. I think they went to Korea, or I'm thinking about the MLB. But all
I
these
think that was
series,
the
they go international to get a different fan base to get them interested in different sports. Like I'm a big fan of the Korean Englishman, so when I saw I don't remember exactly what teams went to South Korea, but baseball is really big in South Korea. So having the MLB there um, to promote the Major League Baseball for America, it's a great opportunity. The fact that these happen every year, I think that's a little bit of like a not like a hindrance, but like it's a little bit like why are we continuing on this show if it's happening every year? But I feel like we see like a good racing at Miami, not the best, but I mean, I kept my eyes wide open during this entire Grand Prix.
Yeah, I think that's really what it comes down to, right? Is the fact that like you do see the North American sports, particularly the three big ones, right? The NFL, the NBA, and the MLB, expanding globally because they understand the power of like global business. Where like the NHL has always pretty much done that. It's a very
Yeah.
global sport, anyways. But I think the point that I'm making is that when you take a look at those sports, they seem to just always have consistency within their product.
yeah.
Where every time Formula One comes over to more specifically, because you don't really see this with Coda as much, at least this is my opinion. But specifically when you get to Miami, specifically when you get to Vegas, it does seem to feel like it's about the show, and then oh by the way, we also have Formula One going on Sunday.
Hmm.
So like that's just sort of the perception that I
Yeah.
gather at those two races specifically. And maybe you can say that like well, those are just the exception because it's Miami and Las Vegas. And it's like, all right, well, I accept that to a degree. And as you were saying, like, well, we're going to be here for a number of years. Like,
Yeah.
why, why do we have to make as big of a deal of it every single year? Why can't we just, I guess it's like it's another race weekend in Las Vegas in the same way it is for it's another race weekend in Silverstone, right?
Yeah.
So I think that's just still the issue, the challenge that Formula One is still facing with Miami and Las Vegas.
Yeah. One thing I actually do want to note, last year the commentators on track didn't really do a good job. It was mainly for the show, especially I think it was F1 Academy's race 2. Ed Sheeran was playing at the same time, so instead of seeing the
Yeah,
F1
that's
Academy
right.
race, you were seeing Ed Sheeran perform on stage on all the big TVs. And that was definitely a point where they prioritized the show than just pure racing. But from what I've heard, like on the broadcast, like I hear the F1 TV broadcast being broadcasted to the entire track, so we're not going to have those issues with the on-track commentators. I have so much to say about the on-track commentators last year. Didn't really do a good job with Formula One Academy. They weren't really talking about the race that was happening on track, just F1 Academy, and saying like, "Oh, if you have a daughter, they could possibly do this," instead of actually commentating what is on track. Because both Tom and I, like Tom went to Japan this past year, you don't see a lot of a Grand Prix in front of you. You only see maybe a 12th or like an eighth of a Grand Prix in front of you. So you need the commentators, you need the large TVs around just to understand what's happening everywhere else.
Hmm.
And the fact that last year in Miami, like part of that was cut off to listen to Ed Sheeran. I'm not knocking Ed Sheeran for this. This is just what happened. I felt like this year they did a lot better job from like showing the racing instead of highlighting the show. But again, this is what I've been seeing on the live broadcasts, because especially for the podium, I can hear the feedback coming from the speakers in the stadium, and what I was actually hearing. It's kind of like an echo because I was watching the F1 TV stream. So you're hearing the commentators talking to everyone at home, but then you're also hearing it on the speakers, which was kind of weird. I'm so sorry I went on this complete different tangent.
No, that's okay. The only difference for Japan is it happened exactly like that. The only difference is they had the Japanese commentators, so you could hear the primarily like the Japanese commentators, but then just like in the background, ever so faintly, you could hear like the F1 TV, so you could hear like Jolyon Palmer, for example. And so, I mean, if it was great for a lot of the locals, obviously, and also because where I was sitting, there was a TV like right in front of me.
Yeah.
Nice.
And you know what? Like if you're watching Formula One a lot, I feel like you don't really need commentary to be able to keep up with
Yeah.
what's going on. Like you could see the times, and I was like, okay, they have different time measurements. Like they don't go down to like the fine seconds,
Yeah,
but
like the hundreds,
Thousands.
thousands.
yeah, they don't do that. They just it was basically like, oh, Max Verstappen is like 8 tenths, like that
Yeah.
in front of Lando Norris or something. So that's the only difference. But yeah, other than that, right, when you're at the track, you see a lot less of the race, but also you're it is still you still find a lot of enjoyment because there is far more things to do and just the ambiance. I don't know if I
Yeah.
would want to do it for like a full year and go to every single race
Yo,
because
yeah.
I do like the comfort of my own home and being able to like actually watch the entire race.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
Um,
multi-viewer, if you have that, you
Oh,
can have all your
yeah.
screens up.
yeah, I mean, I do enjoy that, but then also I don't like flying, so
That's so
That
valid.
is so valid.
I promise there is a point where I'm going to go with this. There was so much stuff happening where I sat last year. Last year I saw a little bit of stuff, but this year we saw the crash between Liam Lawson and Fernando Alonso during the sprint qualifying. We saw Lando Norris finally overtaking Max Verstappen at turn 11. My question is, why this year would you decide turn 11 was actually going to be the magical corner and not last year where I was sitting and basically was just looking at the TV the entire time?
I mean, it's because it's the last year before regulation change and all the cars are supposedly a lot closer together, so you have, I don't know, closer racing. So
No,
more.
they obviously did it in spite of you. That's
Yeah, I
the
know,
what
Yeah.
else?
right?
Yeah.
In spite of me, Isha Bajwa didn't go to the Miami Grand Prix this year and sat at turn 11 like she did last year, so we're going to spite her. I
And you were thinking
100%,
about it too.
I was 100%, I 100% know this is a first world problem, but Anna and I were watching the race together and, and I kept saying, that happened right in front of me,
She would go,
even
"Oh,
though
look,
it
that's
was,
where I was last year."
that's where it was last year. I say, they did that right in front of me, even though I am sitting in my bed and I am not in the seats where I was last year. I
Yeah.
think, again, very first world problem. I'm so happy that I even attended a Grand Prix, but it's so weird seeing like a place you've been to on TV, especially around Formula One, because Miami was my first and only Formula One Grand Prix I attended in person. Seeing it this year after being there, it was so eerie. It was really weird because I know exactly where everything is because I was physically there. I mean, I know the different turns between every other single racetrack on the grid, but just when you're physically there and oh my god, I ate lunch there, or oh my god, I walked through the stadium right there. It was crazy.
Yeah, I actually saw on the Suzuka official account. I think it was like earlier today or yesterday. They had another event going on, and so they showed you like the track map, and it's all in Japanese, of course. But I was like, oh yeah, I know exactly where that is now because like I walked through this. So yeah, it's pretty funny that like once you've been there, you're like, oh yeah, I remember like walking through there. Oh, they have this going on over there. Oh, that's crazy. I was there. So yeah.
See, the only comparison I can make to that is watching like the Detroit Grand Prix and IndyCar of years past and going, "Oh, I remember driving through there." Like
Yeah.
whenever I like visit Detroit for like a Wings game or a Tigers game or a Lions game or something, I'm like, "Oh, I know that. Oh, hey, yeah, that's the lakeshore. Oh, hey, look, there's Canada all the way across the lake over there." That's the only like comparison I can make. I mean, after this year, obviously, I'll be able to go, "Oh, I was sitting, on the finish line," because that's where my grandstand is.
Yeah, but now I promise we're gonna segue into actually talking about what happened on track. I promise talking about turn 11 and complaining that was not my goal. I actually wanted to talk about what happened at all these crazy overtakes that happened. I especially want to ask Tom this. How are you feeling about your boy Liam Lawson?
Like in general, or just like for this weekend?
I mean, for this weekend, but in general, you can knock it out both ways.
Well, I haven't done the my actual race review for Miami yet. But I was gonna give him the like the loser of the weekend. I think for a couple reasons. One mostly just out of circumstance than anything else. I wouldn't go as far to say that there was one like bona fide loser. Like I don't think anyone had, like a horrendous performing weekend. When it comes to like the contact with Fernando, when I first saw the replay, I was like, oh yeah, that's a slam dunk penalty for Liam. But when you actually like watch the onboards, and there was a lot of people that started like making this argument in the comments of like the Racing Bulls account, it was just like, well, yeah, like Liam was pushed. There was like three cars there. Like, where else is Liam supposed to go? And that's the thing is like when you actually watch Fernando's onboard as well, like Liam is slightly in front going into that turn. And
Hmm.
then, you can say that like, oh, well, like Liam should have backed out, but then you also add the fact in that there's another car like just like beside, but also a little further back to Liam. It's not like the other car is 1 second behind him. It's probably like less than a tenth. So it is a little bit more complicated. I mean, I still am okay with the penalty. I think if it was a lot more just like purely on Liam, he probably would have gotten a 10 second.
Hmm.
Um, but I mean, at the end of the day, like it is what it is. The lap one incident, I don't put it on Jack Doohan necessarily.
Yeah.
It's a lap one incident, just in the same way where like Max and Lando, no one got a penalty for that. It's a lap one
Mhm.
incident, but I'm also really lenient, and I think what what tends to sort of get like diluted down is the wheel to wheel racing, and that's kind of unfortunate. But for the whole season, I mean, it's mostly been rough. I mean,
Yeah.
like I like Liam. I mean, I still will, regardless of where he's driving. I mean, I've been cheering for him since like 2021, so that's But yeah, it's been tough. I certainly thought he would do a lot better in Red Bull. He didn't. Whether people want to say it was too harsh after two races is, you can have that debate if you want. The fact of the matter is, like he just didn't perform. Um, Yuki's gone in there, and for the most part, he's looked pretty good. Liam's gone back to racing bulls. He definitely has been better there.
Mm.
Um, but I would still say that like Isaac has had his number for the most part. I think in Saudi was probably like his best weekend. I think that race weekend Liam was for the most part the better driver between the two. But yeah, I mean, it is what it is, right? Like, I also don't think it would matter what Liam does for the rest of this season. I think the only way that Liam will stay with the team for next year is if, either Max or Yuki don't stay at Red Bull. And not to
Mm.
suggest that Liam will go to Red Bull, but Isaac will replace one of them, either Max or Yuki, and then they'll bring Arvid Lindblad because Arvid's going to get one of those seats, right? So it's either
That
going to
kid,
be
that
Isaac's
kid
or yeah,
scares me.
yeah,
He's terrifying. Like, being as young as he is and as good as he is, with the results that he's like pulled out. So
yeah. He's got a pretty high ceiling, but I think a lot of it is just the business aspect. Like,
yeah,
I think Liam was always going to be a placeholder for a guy either like Isaac or Arvid. Arvid for sure, because like even if Isaac keeps this trajectory, like Arvid's their guy for the future, right? So
Mm.
yeah, so we'll see what happens, but right now, if Liam is off the grid for next year, it wouldn't entirely surprise me at this point, which like sucks, but I mean it is what it is. Formula
Yeah.
One is brutal that way.
Formula One is brutal, but also Red Bull is also just very brutal because they always have someone waiting in the wings. I
it's the
mean,
downside of having such a large driver academy,
yeah,
such a large pool of drivers to pull from.
yeah.
You always have that stress of knowing. I don't want to use the term knowing you could be replaced because that is a very brutal term, even if it is real. But
Hmm.
you know that if you don't perform, there is someone waiting in the wings that
Yeah.
can and will take your seat at the earliest convenience that they can.
Yeah, I don't want to turn this into like a conversation about Red Bull so much unless you want to, but the one thing I will say is I think ultimately this is a bigger issue for them that goes back years. And I think what Red Bull should be doing, if they haven't already, is having a conversation about doing with Arvid what Mercedes did with Kimi, like
Mhm.
getting him in old machinery and just like hundreds and thousands of kilometers in older machinery to get him ready for his debut in Formula One. Because like up until pretty much this year, like they haven't prioritized their young drivers, and you may be able to have the sort of what if conversation, like, well, what if Liam was given a full season in 2024 beside Yuki Tsunoda instead of Daniel Ricciardo? Like, would he have done better at Red Bull? It's like, well, I mean, the fact of the matter is he didn't get that full season, and the fact of the matter is he got the opportunity and it didn't work out, right?
Yeah.
So I just think that for how much Red Bull has historically focused on their young drivers, that has seemingly come to bite them in the behind.
Yeah. One now I want to move on to the race, and Anna, I apologize, but I want to talk about this first.
Let's rip the
I
band-aid off. Just do it.
The Met Gala is happening tomorrow. As of recording this, we are recording this on Sunday. The Met Gala is happening tomorrow with Lewis Hamilton being one of the co-chairs alongside Anna Wintour and a bunch of other male black celebrities, which I can't remember off the top of my head right now. Do you know who's also rumored to go to the Met Gala? Charles Leclerc.
So,
After
yeah.
after what happened today, which I am dubbing marinara rules after the great papaya rules of Hungary in 2024. Do you think do you think how would you
That they're sitting at the same
how is
table?
that room going on right now? If they're at the same table, do you think they're going to be okay? Or do we need to
Well,
tell Anna Wintour to separate them now before anything happens?
to be fair, it is, as of right now, still a rumor that Charles is
Yeah.
going. But, and maybe this is me being a bit of a Ferrari glazer, but whatever. Um, Charles and Lewis are two rather level headed individuals. And
Mm-hmm.
when you kind of step back from the track, you let the adrenaline drop a little bit, you do realize a lot of the like animosity is more pointed at the team,
Yeah.
specifically, Ferrari's strategy being Ferrari again, with delaying the calls of swapping positions. Because I remember
Mm-hmm.
it was, I can't remember who the commentators for F1 TV were today, so just shame on me for that, but whatever. We're talking about how much time you lose swapping
Yeah.
a position.
Yeah.
Like when they finally swapped Charles back in front of Lewis with like 10 laps left to go, the gap to Kimi had been like 2.3 seconds and it was up at like 3.1 again after that
Yeah.
swap. So they lost 8 tenths of a second, which to people who aren't huge Formula One fans doesn't seem like a lot of time, but it is a lot of time.
Yeah.
And I would like to say that they're both probably aware that it's a little more pointed towards the strategy team. We didn't hear many of Charles's radios just across the board. We more heard him talking about how he was kind of stuck in his car. He had some issues with something along his right leg, or his knee pad was getting stuck
Yeah.
in the carbon fiber of the car, whatever that was. So we don't know like if he was calling for position swaps, like outside of talking about how his tires were overheating and degrading a little bit faster. But I think they're both aware that it was a little more on Ferrari's side, the strategy call. And I would like to believe, obviously, none of us know them personally or professionally within the sphere of Formula One, that they're level headed enough to not fully blame one another. Obviously,
Mm-hmm.
I'm sure that they will because they're both human. But a lot of that animosity is probably pointed towards the team with relation to why did it take so long to make those calls? Because it did take a hot second to make both of those calls, both to swap Lewis in front of Charles and to swap Charles back in front of Lewis towards the end. So I would like to say that they're level headed enough to not let it get to them, and they've been in the sport long enough and been in these situations multiple times to at least be able to take a step back and let the emotions cool before they have a conversation. But obviously, I would love to be a fly on the wall of that debrief. Because Lord knows someone probably lost their temper a little bit immediately after the race. And honestly, it could go either way between being Lewis and being Charles, because Lewis's comment of "Why don't you have a cup of tea while you're at it?" was
That was
hilarious.
that was hilarious and just
Welcome back, sassy old school Lewis Hamilton.
yes. Yes.
But I think it was interesting too. There was a scene where there was one gentleman in the back of the garage, and then he ended up leaving. And Ted Kravitz pointed out that I think that was like the CEO of not Ferrari itself, but like a Ferrari Racing or something. Somebody else will know it for sure, but that's what like Ted Kravitz pointed out, and I thought that was pretty interesting. It was like, oh wow, while all this is going on over the radio, the Ferrari CEO, whoever that mysterious figure was, clearly was not happy about it, and probably had a few words in the background.
I mean, I remember them cutting to the back of the garage, and I like saw a mechanic walk into like a side room, but there was also a gentleman, I believe he was in a blue shirt. But I know for a fact it was not Piero Ferrari, who is still the like CEO of like Ferrari as a whole. I don't necessarily know if it's the racing aspect, so I agree with you on that. I don't know who that was. But I would not be surprised if someone was not happy with both of those drivers, because arguably on paper, looking at years past, ignoring the season we're currently having, Lewis and Charles are probably the best, just on paper, statistics based team up. So
Mm.
obviously you're gonna want to like try to be fair between the two of them right now, because again we are only in what, this is round six, five or six, whatever. We're still
Six.
extremely early into the season. We're not a quarter of the way through yet.
After Miami, we're a quarter into
There you
the
go.
F1 season.
So obviously between it being still early season and having two very high profile, very talented, very ingrained or soon to be ingrained with Ferrari drivers,
Mhm.
those decisions that in years past with like Carlos and Charles would have been able to be brushed under the rug a little bit more probably aren't going to be from the higher ups.
Mm.
So I'd be interested. I'll have to go back and see from the Sky Sports aspect, because I know I was watching F1 TV, to see if I can find that situation, Tom, and see if I can figure out who that was.
Fun fact, since like I want to say 2020, um, so Sky Sports, they stream their feed to ESPN for American cable viewers, and every F1 session has been saved on my parents' DVR, which I have access to. Thank you to the internet. So I'll maybe do that with you.
Because
I know
they're
that
definitely
F1
going to be
TV
looking to
Pro
say who was ahead.
has their own archive of both F1 TV Pro and Sky Sports feeds, but yeah, just a little fun fact about.
That's definitely going to be interesting to see the deeper we get into the season, especially with the next round being Emilia Romagna. It's like obviously it's an Italian race, so you could say, oh, okay, it's a Ferrari home race, but it's not Monza.
Yeah.
It's not their home race, but it'll be interesting to see if we can see any potential changes from maybe the higher ups pressuring Fred Vasseur and the race engineers, obviously Ricardo and Brian, into and whoever their like heads of strategy are. I don't know their names off the top of my head. Forgive me.
Mm-hmm.
Um, to avoid situations like that. So that's a good thing to bring up, Tom.
Well, I mean, I
Uh,
mean, a way to avoid that stuff would just be to make the car better, right?
Right.
And I,
Lewis Hamilton and Charles Leclerc both have been saying that they need upgrades. They need more than what they have right now because they don't have what they want to extract what positions they want to be in. Um, yeah, I
Yeah,
think.
when a reliably really good qualifying car, or at least a good race pace car, can't extract more than eighth and 12th for starting positions, that's a little concerning on the
Yeah.
engineering side of things.
Hey, Emilia Romagna is going to be the first race we have in Europe, and with most of the teams headquartered there, and especially Ferrari at Maranello in Italy, I am expecting to see a lot of upgrades for Ferrari and also a bunch of other teams. But I also do want to move on to another exciting point of this race. I want to move on to the battle for P2 against Verstappen and Norris. I know I was on the edge of my seat, and I know you are the edge of your seat. Tom, as our resident Formula One fan, what did you think about this?
well, I mean, I thought it was only a matter of time before Lando would pass Max. I do think, though, what is fascinating and what you can really take away from it, and I'll talk about it, like in my uh, race review report as well, is that you take a look at the differences between Oscar Piastri and Lando Norris, and this was a real, in my opinion, this was a solid example of what separates the two, right? And just the calculation and the poise of Oscar Piastri versus Lando Norris, and there. I think a lot of people, more specifically like Lando fans, have this preconceived notion that there's just a lot of Lando hate going around, which first of all, I think if you have your favorite driver that is just doing unwell, then any sort of criticism can be deemed as hate for
Mhm.
sure. So in some ways I think it's kind of a lazy argument, because at the same time too, going into this year, the expectation was that Lando Norris would have learned from last season, and he would be, like the big championship contender. And as of right now, he's behind Oscar Piastri, just not even statistically, but just performance wise. And I think if you watch like how Oscar Piastri overtook Max and was just battling Max versus how Lando was doing it. I think there's just like a stark contrast between how Oscar is just so relentless but also calm,
Yeah.
and is driving more like a championship contender, just in my opinion, versus Lando Norris, who still seems tentative, who still seems to lack the ability to get their elbows out. And even Sky Sports was pointing this out, like, McLaren's on the radio and they're trying to coach Lando through this, and he just can't get it done. And it's like, I think it was an example of like, you either got it or you don't. And so I think it's fascinating. Like, it was going to happen. Like, as a Max fan, I love
Mhm.
watching Max do his work, and I think it goes to show like how dangerous Max Verstappen is, even
Yeah.
in like the second or third best car, sometimes the fourth best car. But yeah, I think that's the biggest takeaway, is just to see like why Oscar Piastri is just in a much better position to win the championship this year than Lando Norris. And that battle, their individual battles with Max, was like the study that anyone needs.
Mm-hmm. To currently, as of I believe this has finally been updated, Oscar Piastri is 16 points ahead of Lando Norris. Lando did manage to take 1 point out of that gap, but that was obviously before the race. That was with the sprint. Though I do want to pose a question to both of you, but especially Tom. Do you think that part of the reason why Oscar has that level headedness, that he's like, obviously he's seen his results, he's gotten his first race win, that he's gotten that under him and gotten that like championship drive, is because of having Mark Webber as a manager, and having the instance of if you don't learn from history, you're doomed to repeat it. That maybe Mark has given him tips on like how to not only like stay level headed when you are fighting a championship contender in your teammate who maybe is prioritized by your team a little bit more. Cough, cough, Sebastian Vettel 2010 or 2012, take your pick. Do you think that's probably helped him a little bit, kind of keep that mellowness and keep his head down and just focus on the race?
I actually want to take this on first because I know Max Verstappen has talked about Mark Webber and Oscar Piastri working together and saying having that a positive influence really helps someone like Oscar Piastri, who is currently the championship leader, as a positive influence because Max had his dad, um, who was also a Formula One driver. So with both of their tutelage, they're able to pass on like the sense of, hey, there's more races to come. Hey, keep your head down. Keep your head down. Do your job. Do the best job you can. I'm not saying Lando Norris isn't doing the best he can, uh, but like with those people around you, you definitely have a leg up compared to most other people.
You'd have to imagine that it helps to a capacity, right? Definitely for Oscar, I would imagine that it's only a net positive having somebody like Mark Webber, sorry, in his corner rather than not. At the same time as well, like, Oscar has always been impressive since he came into Formula One. And I think Formula One largely is a sport where you either got it or you don't.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I think that can be even attributed to a guy like Kimi Antonelli. Like, there were a lot of doubters for Kimi Antonelli going into the season,
Mm-hmm.
and he's done a pretty good job at shutting all of them up, right? So it is one of those things where, like, I think that you obviously, like, you can improve. I think it does come down a lot to like how they drive the car. Oscar Piastri is somebody that has shorter corners than Lando Norris, and I think that does give him an advantage. But the fact that, like, within the first two seasons, we were like, wow, Oscar Piastri is already this impressive. Yes, Lando Norris was the better driver over the two seasons, but it was the fact that the trajectory between both of them, like, there was more upward trajectory for Oscar than there was for Lando. Like, they were both improving, but Oscar was improving more and more. I think the biggest surprise was the last 6 rounds of 2024 for Oscar, where I think that was probably like his worst spree in Formula One.
Yeah.
And even then, like, I mean, he had some good moments sprinkled in there,
Mm-hmm.
but I do think largely it's just the fact that, like, Oscar like I've always said Oscar is a better driver than Lando, and it's not, again, it's not hate on Lando. Lando does a lot of really good things. I think Lando is probably one of the quickest drivers over one lap because of just how smooth he is in terms of like going through especially twisty sections of the track. I actually think he's more of a smooth operator than Carlos Sainz, oddly enough. Seriously, just like watching them drive.
Yeah.
Um, but I do think just ultimately, like Oscar is the better driver of the two, and I think he's showing that. He's showing not only that, like he's quick. He's like arguably quicker than Lando Norris in qualifying, and that was his biggest detriment over the last two seasons, was that like Lando was just blitzing him in qualifying. He's quicker in race pace, but definitely the bigger gap was in qualifying, and Oscar has really like bitten into that, if not is just outright faster in that department too.
That's a good point. I think, and I'll go on to kind of saying that there's probably a mental aspect too. Oscar, like I've gone back and I watched some of his old F2 races. He's always been very calm and level headed. And he came into the season like he was still 21 when he came in, or 22 when he came into his first season in 2023. So he was a little older than I think Lando was, not by much, maybe, but I think the maturity definitely, there was a different level there. And I think he got used to winning a lot quicker than Lando did because it took Lando so long. So maybe Lando just isn't necessarily in the headspace yet and can't necessarily maybe brush off a bad result the same way that Oscar can. But I'll agree that Oscar has like seen what he was, I'll say, lacking in qualifying. It definitely worked on that because we all know that clean air is king. So you want to be farther up the field, means you can get farther in front, means you can get that clean air and be moving faster. And I think a lot of maybe Lando hasn't necessarily done the same thing. Not saying that he doesn't learn from his mistakes, because you can see that he does. Because just especially watching him drive, like Tom said, he's a very, very smooth driver. You can see when he messes up in like a free practice, and he does like obviously fix that in the race, but you also have more laps in a race. But I'll definitely say Lando has a few more things to work on than I think Oscar does.
Yeah. One last thing I want to talk about is one thing that was consistently said, in, at least in our broadcast, is how well both the Williams were doing, especially what year are we in where we have at some point both of the Williams ahead of both of the Ferraris.
What is this, the 90s again?
Yeah, yeah, yes,
It
that
also
quote.
was like early to mid 90s, I think was Williams' last hoorah at the front of the field.
But Williams is showing off that they are not the, I want to say, Mercedes Junior team anymore. They are putting in the work, and especially with Alexander Albon placing P5 in this race ahead of both the Ferraris, and Carlos Sainz trying to catch both Ferraris in that epic three-way battle.
We almost
Is
had
this
a through goes Hamilton again with that
yes? And are
flashbacks.
we finally entering a new era for Williams?
I'll let Tom take that one first.
Oh, it's interesting. I mean, I think there was always some level of expectation going into this year that Williams would be improved, just based on, you know, the when they brought the upgrades to Zandvoort last year, like they really worked. So it seems like James Vowles got in there, and you know, like he helped sort everything out. Um, I don't think anyone expected them to be this good. uh,
Right.
and especially not in front of Ferrari. I think it is more impressive just like how disappointing Ferrari is, but even is it that impressive? It's like I'm not even a Ferrari fan, but it's like this shouldn't have surprised anyone, you know?
Yeah,
Like
Yeah.
going into a season with so much hype and just like falling like
So short.
yeah,
and not even like they're impressively like off the pace of that hype, you know. It's like I would have expected them to be behind McLaren, but I expected them, like they were my prediction to win the constructors, and I predicted Charles Leclerc to win the drivers, because I was like, yeah, if they don't do it in 2025, I don't know if they're going to be able to do it in 2026, because I just think Mercedes will have a way better engine than them.
Yeah.
and so it's like just where they are right now. So yeah, it is sort of the beginning of a renaissance era for Williams. I think it's fantastic. They definitely have one of the better driver lineups on the grid.
Hmm.
Um, they seem to have a much more balanced car. I do wonder if that is going to kind of shift when we start to bring upgrades. And that was sort of I know I like I was expecting it, but I also well I predicted this, and I heard some others that like at the beginning of the season, like the first quarter towards the first half, Williams would be stronger, and then maybe they would come back down to earth in the second half because like other teams would catch them and surpass them.
Yeah.
So maybe you do see Alpine turn it all around. Maybe Aston Martin does get a little bit better, but I don't think so. Maybe Racing Bulls does, but right now it's just like yeah, Williams is probably like on course to finish P5 at least.
Yeah.
They're currently P5 in the standings. And I will agree with you. Is remember we all heard when like the Williams, all of their like where their parts were, how the car was put together was on an Excel spreadsheet. And James
Oh my
Vowles
god.
came in and was like, what the actual hell? Sorry, pardon my language. I think most of the last couple podcasts have been explicit, so whatever, it's fine. Um, and like 2024 was him like cleaning house, getting everything organized, kind of getting everybody on the beginning of being on the right path. And I think like 2025 obviously now is them being on the right path. I believe Emilia Romagna, so I believe the next round is when the first round of like big upgrades is supposed to come, and then I believe Spain afterwards is another one, so after Monaco, which is sorry Tom, the weekend that you and I are going to be in Detroit is the Spanish Grand Prix, so that's going to be fun trying to balance those two races. I definitely think, or at least I hope, especially in the midfield, because I would love to see a knockdown, drag out like Haas v Williams midfield fight all the way to the end of the year, the way that we saw like Ferrari and McLaren last year. Like, yeah, okay, it was pretty astronomically out of contention for Ferrari to take a championship off of McLaren with the way that they ended last year. But I think that's probably what's going to happen, especially with like the European leg, that maybe Williams will come back down to earth a little bit with those potential upgrades. But then again, no one was expecting Williams to be where they are as they are now. So who knows, maybe they won't like take a massive step forward, but maybe they'll just consistently be taking like those one step forwards with each um like round of upgrades they bring, because I think most people would rather take one small step forward every time than three steps forward, two steps back.
Yeah.
Well, because that's going to be the big challenge, right? Is the fact that like these regulations end, so teams have to balance how much of the budget they're going to allocate to this year's car versus how much they're going to put into developing next year. So I think that does sort of play in Williams' favor. Is they do have a strong start, so going into the summer break, they may have like a more of a buffer to the teams behind them. So this is where like scoring those big points are crucial, where like if Alpine does decide to put more budget or spend more money into like this year's car rather than next year's, which I don't like. That's the other thing, is like I don't think they will. Like I don't think Aston Martin's going to. It makes no sense for them to try and climb their way out of the basement. Sauber probably won't. Haas maybe, but a lot of Haas's development is based around Ferrari. So if Ferrari isn't improving, Haas probably won't improve that much more either. And then same thing with Racing Bulls, and they'll probably be the biggest threat because Red Bull apparently will be focusing on this year's car more than next year's car. And I think a lot of that is to ensure that Max Verstappen stays for next season. So yeah, I think it does look good for Williams. I mean, I kind of hope so. I mean, I'm definitely here for a Williams resurgence.
I do have an interesting kind of side tangent, because I know we've probably been yapping for a hot second. Speaking of Mercedes engines and Haas and customer teams, next year we do have a fair bit of the grid being taken up by Ferrari customer teams, and Ferrari, because if, correct me if I'm wrong, I believe it did come out, I want to say maybe the end of last year, the beginning of this one, that Cadillac, because obviously they can't use their own engines, they can't design their own power units until 2028, I believe. is going to be a Ferrari customer. So you have Cadillac, you have Haas, you have Ferrari, and then with Mercedes you
Sauber.
have Sauber. Thank you. You have McLaren, Mercedes, and also soon to be, I believe, Alpine. So it's like it's gonna
Williams.
come down to and then Williams. Thank you. That was the other one. So we're like 4-4 at this point.
Mm.
So it's gonna come down to a battle of the customer teams, really. And it's kind of turning into a bit of an IndyCar situation for me as like Chevy v Honda. So
But
also bye bye Honda
well,
from
like
Red Bull.
Ford is also going to be there. They're going to be supplying the power units for 26, so it's not going to be a full like
Right.
IndyCar
It's not
2
going to be
power unit.
full 2v2, but so do how do we think that might turn out? Also, how do we think Cadillac is going to do if we're throwing out a wild pre 2026 season curveball? Because
I
we did see the owner of Cadillac on the grid pre-race.
With the rumors circulating around about who's going to be joining the Cadillac team, there's rumors that Checo is going to be joining Cadillac and Zhou Guanyu is coming back in a full time role with Cadillac. Um, just going off with those drivers, I mean, yes, of course, yes, Checo was let go from RB from not putting in that performance, but he was trying to be close to Max Verstappen, and we know Max Verstappen can take any machinery and put it into a top four contention. I honestly think he's probably be in the upper to middle fields, but Zhou Guan Yu, again, last time we saw him was in Sauber in a full time role. So maybe I'm going to see him in the middle pack because they both have some really great experience in Formula One. We can't negate that. So if I'm gonna make a prediction based on the rumors of the drivers, I'm gonna say like pretty midfield, P5 to P7 in the constructors for next year, but
Oh,
we don't know what their machinery is going to look like, what the team is being made out of. We're going off of rumors and vibes right now.
straight vibes. Tom?
Well, I mean, on the conversation about the drivers, I mean, it makes total sense for both Checo and Joe to be there next year. Checo for his marketability, and just like, I feel like that would be their way to maybe, getting an American driver was more of an Andretti priority.
Mm-hmm.
I think with the fact that there's still an Andretti flavor to this team, it definitely is more General Motors focused. And I think if you take a look at, other than Colton Herta, like what other option do they have for an American driver? And even Colton Herta still doesn't have the super license points. And he may not even want to do it, right? So I
I'm
think
I'm gonna throw a wild card out there. Chloe
mm,
Chambers to F1. To F1 to
I
Cadillac
don't.
F1. I know she probably won't have the super license points. She's doing so well in Formula One Academy. Maybe it's an opportunity for her to go for an American driver, go for an American
Well,
female
that would be,
driver. But
yeah,
this
that
is
would be the
me
thing.
being really delulu and also me being a really big Chloe Chambers stan. Anyway.
Well, that would be the big thing, right? It's like she doesn't have the super license points, but at the same time, you take a look at what her name escapes me. There's the one British girl that is part of the Aston Martin
Team.
academy.
Oh,
Just Hawkins.
yes,
Yeah,
Jess
yeah.
Hawkins.
So you could probably see Chloe Chambers, maybe not for Cadillac, but do something like that for Ford,
Yeah.
right? Because yeah. So
Oh yeah.
I could very much see something like that for sure. But Checo makes a lot of sense. I even think that you could probably say he'd be more of a popular driver in America than
Mm-hmm.
somebody like Colton Herta. So I think that's their way of getting, like, we don't have an American driver, but we have somebody that is really popular in America. And then the Zhou Guan Yu signing would simply be, well, he brings in a lot of money as well. He has experience. Yes, he's not the fastest driver, but he's also not a bad driver
Yeah.
either. And he brings like the Chinese market with him, but he also is a Ferrari reserve driver. Cadillac's using Ferrari engines. Ferrari's like any other factory team where they install drivers in their customer teams if they can. So I think that just makes a lot of sense. If I'm being honest, I think Checo makes a lot of sense, but I would love to see Alex Palou in the Formula One
Oh,
seat.
Oh.
Yeah,
with his
especially if he wins.
dominance areas right now. And
If he wins if he wins a fourth this would be his fourth, right? Fourth IndyCar championship.
Yeah, I believe he's a
Um,
three-time champion.
then like how do you? And this would be also three in a row. I'm pretty sure. Like how just
question: has he won the
stop.
500?
No, I
No,
don't believe
no.
so.
If he wins 500 this year and then goes to Cadillac next year, triple
Well, and I
crown
mean
question mark?
yeah, and he has ties to Cadillac, so that's more like my Delulu than anything else. But yeah, I think my money would be on Checo and Joe. Insofar as where I think the team will be, I think it'll probably be hovering around the bottom three. To be honest with you, I think a lot of it depends on less about the car itself, more about the Ferrari power unit.
Yeah.
Hmm.
And the reports are that Ferrari and Red Bull are the two teams that are having the biggest issues with their 2026 power units. So if that is the case, then just the fact that Cadillac will be a new team, even with Checo and Joe, I don't think it's the most talented lineup, but we've seen what Checo can do with subpar machinery. So I would probably put them in like the in P8 because I do think that it sort of wouldn't surprise me if Haas did sort of regress back, and if you saw a team like Racing Bulls, especially if the power unit's not great, if they're at the bottom, something like that. Maybe Audi, but I have more confidence in Audi.
All right. I'd probably agree that Checo and Joe make the most sense, especially like from a General Motors standpoint. So it's like it's not necessarily American driver, American team anymore. But like Checo again, yeah, is very well liked, very marketable, brings in a lot of money with I believe he still has the whole Kit Kat tie thing. So he would make sense from that perspective. Obviously, Joe has the, pardon the turn of phrase, Lance Stroll esque kind of deep connections with Ferrari, and obviously Ferrari gets supplying their engines. That would make the most sense. I could see maybe a left field throw for someone like Alex Plo probably makes the most sense with just pure experience. And then I want to say maybe there's like an equal far left field likelihood for both Pato and Colton for various other reasons that I won't get into because I could go on about that forever. Um, but as to where I think they'd probably end up, I'd say like their first, let's say 2 or 3 years, probably very Haas esque, the way that they were when they first came in. Because I believe like their 2018 season was their best season to date, unless no, because they didn't finish particularly high last year. But I think Haas did pull a P6 in the constructors at one point, so they were like top of the midfield. I want to say it was like 2018. So I could see them maybe like their first 2 or 3 years pulling out a P6 finish. Maybe if they have an absolutely like stellar end of the season. And they do hit that spot where it's like, oh, there's too many points behind them for another team to make up and too many points ahead of them for them to make up, and they get that like one spot because usually like P1 and P6 end up getting cemented pretty early on before the end of the season. I could see that happening. But I'd say giving them a wide berth of opportunity, like seventh to ninth, maybe. I don't think they'd be like dead last because we do have Aston Martin, and who knows how long it's going to take Adrian Newey to work his magic over there.
I
But
mean,
I'll give them the
Adrian
benefit of the
Newey,
doubt.
I'm forgetting who the team principal is right now currently for Aston Martin, but he's focusing on the 2026 car. I mean, you might have like a little bit of the hand on the current car right now, but currently Martin, their focus is on 2026 and beyond.
Yeah, and
Just
Andy Cowell is not
thank
letting.
you.
Yeah, Andy Cowell's not letting Adrian Newey touch this year's car. What? How funny in a sad way would it be if like Cadillac finished ahead of Ferrari next year?
Oh, do not
Oh my
utter that
god.
sentence. I was thinking you have not done something this podcast recording to piss me off, Tom. And then you utter that sentence.
I mean, for me, it's the confliction of me being a Ferrari fan, but also being an American. I
Right.
mean, would I love to see a very American team like Cadillac be be really great and dominant? Yes, but my Tifosi heart will cry.
Not
Yeah.
even so much dominant. It's just like they finish. I don't know, like P7 and Ferrari's just like P8. Like
I mean,
they.
physically, the part of me wants to say that as long as Ferrari has good drivers, and I guess this is a very Max Verstappen-esque like paradox. They'll be able to pull out enough decent to good finishes, maybe a P3 here and there in some random wacky world to keep that from happening.
Yeah.
But Tom, I hate the fact that you just put that out into the universe.
That's a lot of copium I'm hearing. I'm like, I'm just saying,
It's not gonna
it
happen.
wouldn't
It's not
surprise
gonna
me.
happen. It's not gonna happen. We're not putting that out into the universe.
All
Give
right.
Cadillac like 10 years to really get their foot in the door, let them go through a couple of regulation changes, and then maybe they can go and take the battle to like Ferrari, McLaren, Mercedes.
I'm just saying, like if Ferrari had a bad 2026, Cadillac finishes ahead of them, Lewis is like, it's over. I'm done. I can't do this anymore. And then Max Verstappen replaces him. I'm just saying, I could see it.
What, a Max and Charles
Wow.
team up at Ferrari and then them tanking?
No, no, no. And then like them, succeeding.
Oh, I mean, I'd take that. I would love to see the sheer and utter chaos of even, like, obviously Max and Charles would be in 30, 31, probably 27, 28 rolls around. Oh, that would be so chaotic.
That's just the storyline, right? Because like the whole conversation right now is about like Max Verstappen going to Mercedes or Aston Martin. It's like, no, no, no. I'm putting this in the universe. Is that 2026? He's gonna give Red Bull a chance. They're gonna suck, and then he's gonna be like, no, I'm gonna replace Lewis at Ferrari and go there for 2027. So
All right. I'm
Do we,
so happy we're having this lively conversation. Do we have any other little comments we want to throw out there?
do we want to throw out a potential podium for Emilia Romagna? We got a week. We're
Got a
heading
week.
into an off weekend, so keep in mind upgrades are coming out. This is what we'll close the podcast on, is what is our potential, maybe Delulu, maybe realistic, depending on how you want to take it,
Yeah.
podium for Emilia Romagna.
My realistic one is obviously I'm not, this is not in any particular order, but we have to see Oscar Piastri up there because he's been performing so well. Is it going to be a double McLaren? I don't know. Let's see what the upgrades bring. But for right now, I am toying with Oscar Piastri, Max Verstappen, after spending some time with this amazingly cute daughter. And you know what? Maybe we see Delulu Williams up there.
Okay, Tom.
in order from P1 to P3, I'm gonna say Lando gets the win. I feel like he'll bounce back and he'll do better around a circuit like Imola. Oscar Piastri P2, so like it'll be a McLaren 1-2. And then I'm gonna say he's gonna continue doing well, and he's gonna get the podium that he should have got this weekend, and it's gonna be Kimi Antonelli P3.
All right. Oh, I'll be equal parts realistic and delusional here. I'm going to say I'll agree with Tom and think that Lando will get his feet underneath him a little bit, so he's going to end up P1. I'm going to say P2 and P3 will be purely the power of Italy. We're going to get a Kimi P2. The kid has been on fire. He did take a pole position and a P3, so we'll split the difference and give him P2. And maybe, and yes, this is me being a glazer, but I need to have something positive come out of the day today because none of my guys did well. I'll say Charles P3, but I'm gonna say he's gonna have to drag it out by the skin of his teeth.
Perfect. Well, with our predictions set, we are ready for the Emilia Romagna Grand Prix happening in 2 weeks. We do have an off week, but we will definitely be catching you later for the Emilia Grand Prix wrap up. Thank you so much, Tom, for being a part of this podcast. We love yapping with you.
Welcome
All
back.
of his social medias will be in the show notes, as well as Anna and I's, as always. But also, go follow Chaos in the Paddock on all social medias. We have some really, really, really cool stuff happening there. So,
So
yeah. Thank you so much, guys, and we'll see you later.
see you
Bye.
later.